guys. It is good to speak with you through your television or computer screen or wherever you're watching this. Can you believe it? We are at the end of 30-week series, and maybe some of you have met during this entire time. We started in January, first 10 weeks before Easter, next 10 weeks after Easter, and then this summer we finished the final stretch. I think it's been a good series on basic beliefs and practices and virtues and what it means to get real about following Jesus and letting it impact our life. So we came to the last one, and it's called humility this time. That's the virtue. It's not one of the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5, but it definitely is a fruit of the Spirit when we have humility in our lives. There's a phrase that is stuck with me. I really like it when it comes to defining humility. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. In other words, thinking more of others than ourselves. And that's really what Jesus modeled for us with humility. Hey, I want to tell you a story. I grew up in a fundamentalist denomination. I've often talked about it. Some of you know, actually, I was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist and became a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. And then I went through a 10-year grace awakening, I like to call it, where preaching through Galatians and Romans and Ephesians, I really preached my way out of that denomination and began to understand better the beautiful truth of the gospel as unfolding in the new covenant. And in fact, I wrote a book about that. It's called Keep the Main Thing, the Main Thing. No, it's just called The Main Thing, 40 Days of Grace. My tattoo says the main thing is keep the main thing, the main thing. And I know that sounds like something you've heard over and over and over, but I hope you will read this book because I think it'll be a blessing to you. And I'll be giving these away, one per family, at our 25th anniversary, September 12. I hope you'll be there. The reason we call Grace Place is because I came from Law Place. But I want to tell you a little story about what happened when I was in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. They have this tradition where they do communion 3 or 4 times a year, quarterly. And on communion day, they start by dismissing everyone when it's time for communion to go to separate rooms to wash each other's feet. And then they come back to take the bread and the cup. And it feels kind of weird. I mean, I always didn't like it when I was a kid because you go into this big room and there's a big basin of water and you all had these little buckets and you go get your water and you go and then you'd have to take your shoes off and it was guys with guys and girls with girls. But then you had to find a partner and it's like, who wants to be my partner and wash my feet? And then you have to go dump the water and get some more and wash the other person's feet. Then some of the more progressive or liberal churches started doing couples room. And that was, some people thought, you shouldn't be doing that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not making fun of it. I'm glad we don't do that at Grace Place. But where that comes from is a story that is in our reading here on the last chapter. And it's in John chapter 13, where Jesus washed the disciples' feet. And it says that Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Probably all of you know that story, but just think about what it represents. This was a very humble thing for Jesus to do for 2 reasons. First of all, in those days, most people wore sandals and they walked in dusty roads and streets, and so their feet were filthy. And I'm sure the water got black and the towel got stained. Maybe you had to pour it out a few times and get some clean water. And I mean, this is not something that you would think the disciples would have allowed Jesus. In fact, Peter didn't want Jesus to do it, and Jesus said, "No, you need to let me do this." So it wasn't fun. It was smelly. It was dirty. But the humiliation or the humbling of himself, it goes beyond that to the fact that in that culture, this was work for a servant. Okay, that's why none of them wanted to do it, because they didn't want to say, "I'll be the servant." And so Jesus jumps up and said, "Hey, that's what I'm about, and that's what I want you to be about, serving others." In fact, another place he said, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." And so when he gets to the end of this, after he's washed their feet, it says, when he finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. That's, by the way, where the Adventists got the idea that they had to wash their feet, because he says you should wash each other's feet. That's okay if you want to do that, if you want to take it literally. I don't take it literally. I think what he's saying is I've set you an example of what it looks like to humble yourself, to be a servant, to put others ahead of you, to not be self-promoting and proud. In fact, several times in the Bible it says God opposes the proud and gives favor to the humble. Think about that verse. Do you want God to oppose you, or do you want him to give you favor? Man, I can't think of a worse thing than have God oppose me. So I wanted to ask him to help me get rid of pride in my life, because there's nothing better than having his favor and his grace in my life. And he says, I pour that out where I see humility. I hope you guys have a great study. I think we're going to take a break here for a couple weeks from this former curriculum, and then we'll talk to you more as we get into the fall about small groups. We've got some exciting plans for this fall for series and for groups, and we'll be unveiling that as we go. God bless you. Have a good discussion.